The October wind cut through the Douglas firs behind Harry Lockhart's house in Willow Glen, Oregon, carrying the smell of rotting leaves and coming rain. He stood at his kitchen window, coffee growing cold in his hands, watching the last light fade from the sky. The backyard stretched into darkness, overgrown and wild since Jessica stopped caring about the garden 5 years ago. Harry's reflection stared back at him from the glass at 46 years old, graying at the temples, lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. The same face that had looked back at him the morning after Avery disappeared, when the world still made sense and he believed his wife's tears were real. Something moved near the old apple tree. Harry set down his mug and stepped closer to the glass. A shape huddled beneath the branches, small and trembling. His military training kicked in assess, identify, react. 20 years in Army intelligence had taught him to trust his instincts, to see threats before they materialized. But this wasn't a threat. This was something broken. The shape was human. Female. Youngdy grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door and stepped outside. The motion sensor light blazed to life, washing the yard in harsh white that made the shadows look deeper and more menacing. The figure didn't run, didn't move at all. "Hey," Harry called, his voice gentle but firm. The tone he'd used with frightened civilians in Afghanistan, people who'd seen too much and trusted too little. "You okay out there?" The shape turned toward him. A girl, maybe 20, with matted brown hair that hung past her shoulders like a curtain. Her clothes were torn and dirty jeans that had once been blue, a sweater that might have been white. Mud caked her bare feet. Tears streaked her face, leaving clean lines through the dirt. The motion sensor light flickered, casting moving shadows across her features. Harry took a step closer, and his heart stopped, the shape of her nose. The line of her jaw, the way she held her left shoulder slightly higher than her right, a habit she'd had since childhood. "Dad!" The word hit him like a rifle shot. His legs went weak. The voice older now, rougher, carrying pain he couldn't imagine, but unmistakable. "Avery." She stood on unsteady legs, swaying in the light. 5 years older than the 15-year-old who had vanished without a trace from her bedroom one night in October. 5 years of hell written in the hollow of her cheeks, and the way she held herself like she expected to be hurt. "I'm home," she whispered, and collapsed. Harry caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed nothing. Bones and skin and fear wrapped in rags that smelled of desperation and too many nights sleeping rough. He carried her inside, his mind racing through possibilities, explanations, any rational reason his dead daughter was breathing in his arms. The house felt different with her in it. Warmer somehow, despite the October cold seeping through the windows. He hadn't realized how empty it had become until she filled part of it again. Harry set Avery on the living room couch and wrapped her in the old quilt his mother had made blue and white squares that had covered him as a child, that had covered Avery during her first years of life. She clutched it to her chest like armor, her fingers finding the familiar pattern of stitches that he knelt beside her, afraid that speaking too loud might make her disappear again. She was solid, real, breathing. But 5 years had taught him not to trust hope. "Where have you been?" The question came out hoarse as Avery's eyes darted toward the stairs where Jessica's voice drifted down. She was on one of her endless phone calls, probably with her book club friends, gossiping about neighbors, and planning charity events that made her feel important and virtuous. "She can't know I'm here," Avery said. "Not yet." "Who can't know?" "Jessica." Avery nodded, fresh tears spilling over. They fell onto the quilt, darkening the blue squares. "Dad, I need to tell you something. About what happened to me. About why I disappeared." Harry's chest tightened. He'd spent 5 years believing his daughter was dead. The police had given up after 6 months. No body, no leads, no trace. Jessica had grieved in her theatrical way, lots of tears in public, lots of sympathy from friends who brought casseroles and flowers and empty words about God's plan. But she moved on fast. Too fast. "Tell me," he said. Avery took a shaking breath. Her hands twisted in the quilt, and Harry saw scars on her wrists, thin white lines that spoke of restraints, of struggle, of things no parent should ever have to imagine. It wasn't an accident. Someone didn't take me. I wasn't kidnapped by a stranger. Then what? Mom sold me. The words hung in the air like poison. Harry felt something cold settle in his stomach, spreading outward until his whole body went numb. The living room is sanctuary for 5 years, the place where he'd grieved and raged and slowly learned to live with loss suddenly felt foreign. That's impossible. I heard her on the phone that night. Before it happened, she was talking to someone about getting rid of the problem. She said I was getting too difficult, asking too many questions about why she was never home, why she had so much money all of a sudden. Avery's voice grew stronger as she spoke, like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in darker places than this warm living room. She said she found a solution. Harry's mind rejected it. Jessica was selfish, distant, cold, but this was something else entirely. This was evil wrapped in silk pajamas and perfect makeup. The next morning, she made me breakfast. Pancakes with syrup, the kind I liked when I was little. I thought she was trying to be nice, trying to connect with me. Avery laughed, a bitter sound that belonged to someone much older. I should have known. She hadn't made me breakfast in 3 years. What happened then? I woke up in a car, drugged. There was a man driving, someone I'd never seen. He had my suitcase, like she'd packed for me. He said I was going to live somewhere new, somewhere I'd be useful. Harry's hands clenched into fists. 20 years of military training had taught him to control violence, to channel it toward productive ends. But sitting here listening to his daughter describe being sold like livestock, that training felt thin as paper. Where did he take you? Seattle first, then other places. I was sold to different people, moved around. They called it logistics like I was cargo. She pulled the quill tighter. I escaped 6 months ago. A woman named Lorna helped me. She ran a safe house for girls like me. It took me this long to find the courage to come home. Girls like you, girls who'd been trafficked, sold by people they trusted. Harry stared at his daughter, this stranger who wore Avery's face, but carried years of pain he couldn't imagine. Every instinct told him to reject what she was saying. But his training, his experience reading people in high-stress situations, told him she was telling the truth, the way she held herself, the way she chose her words. The scars on her wrists and the ones he couldn't see but knew were there. This wasn't a runaway making up stories. This was a survivor. She sold you, he repeated, testing the words. For money. A lot of money. I heard her talking about it later, on calls when she thought I was unconscious. She was happy, Dad, excited about what she could do with all that cash. She talked about traveling, about the condo she wanted to buy in Portland. Footsteps on the stairs. Jessica's voice growing louder as she approached, still talking to whoever was unfortunate enough to be on the other end of her monologue about yoga classes and wine tastings. Hide, Harry said. Basement. Now. Avery slipped away like a ghost, taking the quilt with her. Harry grabbed her muddy shoes from beside the couch and shoved them into the closet, just as Jessica entered the living room. Who were you talking to? She asked. She wore the silk pajamas he'd bought her for their anniversary 3 years ago, her blonde hair perfectly styled even at 9 at night. Everything about her was immaculate, controlled, expensive. Myself, Harry said, thinking out loud. Jessica studied him with those calculating blue eyes that had once made him feel like the luckiest man alive. Now, they felt like ice water. She'd always been beautiful, but there was something underneath the beauty that he'd missed for too long, something predatory. You look pale. Everything okay? Fine, he said. Just tired. She moved closer, and he caught her perfume, the same expensive scent she'd worn since college, back when he thought her sophistication was attractive instead of artificial. You've been working too much. Those furniture orders aren't going anywhere. I know. She smiled, that practiced expression she used when she wanted something or was hiding something. The same smile she'd given him the morning after Avery disappeared, when she'd stood in the kitchen making coffee and talking about calling the police. I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late with your woodworking. She kissed his cheek, the same mechanical gesture she'd been giving him for years. Her lips were cold. Then she was gone, back upstairs to her separate bedroom. Her separate life that he'd never questioned closely enough. Harry waited until he heard her door close. Then he went to the basement. Avery sat in the corner near his workbench, surrounded by the tools and projects that had kept Harry sane these past 5 years. Half-finished chairs lined the walls like silent witnesses. A dining table he'd been crafting for no one in particular dominated the center of the space. Shelves that would never hold anything important gathered dust in the corners. This was where he'd come to think, to plan, to grieve without Jessica watching him with those cold eyes that never seemed to see his pain. "We need to be smart about this," he said. "If what you're telling me is true, you don't believe me." Harry knelt in front of her. Up close, he could see more evidence of what she'd endured: a small scar through her left eyebrow, a slight bump in her nose that suggested it had been broken. Details that painted a picture he didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. "I believe you, but believing and proving are different things. If we're going to take her down, we need evidence. We need a plan. Take her down. She sold my daughter. She destroyed our family. She's been lying to my face for 5 years while I grieve for a child who was being tortured." Harry's voice stayed level, controlled, but something dark moved behind his eyes. "I don't forgive that kind of betrayal. What if she denies it? What if she convinces people I'm lying? Then we make sure that's impossible." Harry stood and paced the small space between his workbench and the stairs. His mind was already working, falling into patterns learned in military intelligence: identify the target, gather information, plan the operation, execute with precision. "Tell me exactly what you remember about that night." "Everything." Avery closed her eyes, and Harry saw her steel herself for the memories. "I went to bed around 10. She came in to say goodnight, which was weird because she never did that anymore. She seemed nervous, excited maybe. She kept asking if I was tired, if I wanted anything to drink. Then, what? I woke up feeling sick, dizzy, nauseous. I tried to get up to go to the bathroom, but my legs wouldn't work right. That's when I heard her on the phone downstairs." "What did she say?" "She was talking to a man. I could hear his voice, but not the words. She said the problem is taken care of, and when do I get the rest of the money?" Then she laughed. This horrible, happy laugh. Harry felt pieces clicking together like a rifle being assembled. "What happened when you tried to go downstairs?" "I couldn't make it. The drugs were too strong. I passed out on the stairs. When I woke up, I was in the car." "Did you recognize the man?" "No. He was older, maybe 50, well-dressed. He had this cold way of talking, like I wasn't really a person." Avery opened her eyes and looked directly at her father. "He called me merchandise." The word hit Harry like a physical blow. He'd interrogated terrorists, war criminals, men who had done unspeakable things. But none of them had ever made him feel the kind of rage that was building in his chest now. "What else do you remember?" "The car ride took hours. We stopped at a house in Seattle, and he handed me over to other people. They had papers, documents. Everything was organized, professional." "How many people were involved?" "I don't know. I saw maybe 6 or 7 different faces in the first few days. They moved me 3 times in the first week." Harry processed this information like intelligence data. Multiple handlers suggested a large operation. Professional documentation meant money, organization, connections. This wasn't some random crime of opportunity. This was business. "I need to go upstairs," he said. "Talk to her. See how she reacts. Be careful. She's not the woman you married. I don't think she ever was." Harry went upstairs and found Jessica in the kitchen, making her nightly tea. She hummed while she worked, content in her perfect little world built on lies and blood money. The sound made his skin crawl. "We need to talk," he said. She turned, eyebrow raised. In the overhead light, her makeup looked artificial, painted on. He wondered how he'd never noticed that before. "About what?" "Avery." Jessica went very still. The humming stopped. The tea kettle whistled on the stove, but she didn't move to turn it off. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and Harry saw something else underneath fear. Calculation? Then the concerned wife expression slid back into place. "Harry, honey, we've talked about this. You can't keep dwelling on what happened. It's been 5 years. The grief counselor said. She's alive." Jessica's hand tightened on her tea mug. The knuckles went white. "What?" "I said she's alive. Our daughter is alive." "That's impossible. You know that." The police said a lot of things, but they never found a body. They never found proof she was dead. Jessica set down her mug with hands that shook just slightly. Harry cataloged every micro-expression, every tell. This was how he'd read enemy combatants, insurgents trying to hide crucial information. Harry, you're scaring me. Has something happened? Did someone contact you? Her concern sounded genuine. Her voice had just the right amount of worry, confusion, hope. If Harry didn't know better, he believed she was a mother desperate for news about her missing child. But he did know better. He'd been trained to spot liars, to read micro-expressions and body language. Jessica was performing, and she was good at it. Someone did contact me, he said. Someone who knows what really happened that night. What are you talking about? You tell me. They stared at each other across the kitchen island. The tea kettle continued to whistle, filling the silence with its shrill demand for attention. Jessica's eyes searched his face, trying to figure out how much he knew, how much he was guessing. I don't know what you want me to say, she said finally. I want you to tell me where she is. I don't know where she is. The words came out too fast, too sharp. Harry, you're acting crazy. Our daughter was taken. Some sick person kidnapped her, and we never found out who. It destroyed us. It destroyed our marriage. And now you're standing here accusing me of what exactly? You tell me what I'm accusing you of. Jessica straightened her shoulders, and Harry saw the shift happen. The concerned wife disappeared. Something colder took her place, something that had been hiding behind silk pajamas and charity work for years. I think you need help, she said. Professional help. This obsession isn't healthy. Is that your answer? My answer is that I loved our daughter, and I miss her every day, and I won't let you turn me into some kind of monster because you can't accept that sometimes terrible things happen to good people. She was lying. Harry could see it in the way she held herself, the way her voice got stronger instead of breaking with emotion. A real mother, talking about her missing child, would be sobbing. Jessica looked like she was giving a speech to the Rotary Club. You know what I think? Jessica continued. I think you're having some kind of breakdown. I think the stress of teaching those kids at the high school, dealing with their problems all day, it's making you paranoid. Okay, he said. Okay, I believe you. Relief flickered across her face just for a second, but Harry caught it. Good, because this conspiracy thinking. Good night, Jessica. Harry walked away, leaving her standing in the kitchen with her carefully crafted words hanging in the air and the tea kettle still screaming for attention. He'd learned what he needed to know. She wasn't afraid of Avery being found. She was afraid of being caught. Harry drove through the night toward Portland, his hands steady on the wheel despite the storm building in his chest. Avery slept in the passenger seat, wrapped in a quilt, trusting him to keep her safe. He wouldn't fail her again. The highway stretched empty ahead of them, lit only by the occasional truck stop or all-night diner. Harry had driven this route hundreds of times over the years, but tonight it felt different. Tonight he was carrying his daughter home from hell, and the landscape looked like a battlefield. Zeke Moreau lived in a converted garage behind a small house in southeast Portland. The neighborhood was industrial, full of auto shops and warehouses that looked abandoned, but probably weren't. Harry parked in the alley and knocked on a metal door marked with a hand-painted sign. Z's Auto, by appointment only. The door opened to reveal a compact man with grease-stained fingers and intelligent brown eyes. Zeke Moreau had been Harry's surveillance tech specialist in Afghanistan, the guy who could wire anything, track anyone, find patterns in data that looked like chaos to everyone else. He'd saved Harry's life at least 3 times and never asked for anything in return. Well, I'll be damned, Zeke said. Harry Lockhart. Thought you were dead. Not yet. Come in. Bring your friend. Zeke's workshop was part auto repair, part electronics lab, part command center for operations that probably weren't entirely legal. Computer monitors showed lines of code, security camera feeds, and satellite maps. Tools covered every surface wrenches next to circuit boards, engine parts beside surveillance equipment. The smell of motor oil mixed with electronic components and strong coffee. This is Avery, Harry said. My daughter. Zeke's expression shifted as he studied the girl. He'd been there when Harry got the call about her disappearance, had seen him fall apart in real time. The one who went missing, the one who was sold. Sold. Zeke said it like he was tasting the word testing its weight. By who? Her mother. My wife. Zeke pulled 2 folding chairs from a stack in the corner. The metal was cold and institutional, military surplus that had probably seen action in 3 different conflicts. Sit, talk, and don't leave anything out. Harry told him everything: Avery's return, her story, Jessica's reaction. Zeke listened without interrupting, his face growing darker as the details piled up. When Harry finished, Zeke was quiet for a long time, staring at a bank of monitors that showed traffic patterns across the city. You believe her? Zeke asked finally. I've been reading people for 20 years. She's telling the truth. And you want to prove it. I want to destroy the people who did this to her. Zeke nodded slowly. What do you need? Financial records. Phone logs. Any digital trail from 5 years ago. Someone paid Jessica, and she paid someone else. Money leaves tracks. That's illegal. I know. Could get us both arrested. I know. Could get us killed if we dig into the wrong people's business. I know. Zeke looked at Avery, who sat quietly watching their conversation. She hadn't spoken since they'd arrived, but her eyes took in every detail of the workshop, cataloging exits and weapons and potential threats. 5 years of hell had taught her to assess every situation for danger. What do you want, kid? Justice or revenge? Both, she said without hesitation. Zeke smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. It was a predator's smile, the expression he'd worn when tracking insurgents through the mountains of Afghanistan. I like her. Okay, Harry, you want to go to war? Let's go to war. Dr. Evie Lawrence's office sat on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian house in downtown Willow Glen. Harry had found her name in the phone book under trauma counseling and made the appointment under a false name. He couldn't risk word getting back to Jessica, not when they were still building their case. The building was old but well-maintained, with hardwood floors that creaked under their feet and windows that looked out over the town square. It felt safe, solid, like the kind of place where truth could be spoken without fear. Doctor Lauren was younger than Harry expected, maybe 38, with short red hair and fierce green eyes that missed nothing. She wore jeans and a cardigan instead of a business suit, and her office felt more like a living room than a medical facility. Books lined the walls, psychology texts mixed with fiction, art books scattered among academic journals. Tell me why you're here, she said after Harry and Avery had settled on the couch. Avery looked at her father. Harry nodded. I was sold, Avery said, by my mother, 5 years ago. Dr. Lauren didn't flinch, didn't question, didn't ask for proof. She just listened as Avery told her story again, this time with more details: the men who had bought and sold her, the places she'd been kept, the things she'd endured that would give other people nightmares for years. Harry watched the doctor's face as Avery spoke. Dr. Lauren took notes on a legal pad, her pen moving quickly across the page, but her expression never changed from professional compassion. She'd heard stories like this before. How did you escape? Dr. Lauren asked. A woman named Lorna Kipp. She ran a safe house in Sacramento. She helped girls like me, girls like you, girls who've been trafficked, sold by people they trusted. Dr. Lauren made more notes. When Avery finished talking, the doctor set down her pen and looked directly at her. I believe you, she said. Everything you've described follows patterns I've seen in other trafficking victims. The way you hold yourself, the way you tell your story, the details you remember, and the ones you don't. It's all consistent. Relief washed over Avery's face. People will think I'm lying. Some people will. But not everyone, and not a jury, if we present your case properly. Harry leaned forward. You think we should go to the police? Dr. Lauren shook her head. Not yet. Local police missed this case 5 years ago. Either they're incompetent or someone got paid to look the other way. Either way, they're not your best option. Then what is? Public pressure, media attention. Make this story so big, so visible, that the authorities have no choice but to act. Dr. Lauren turned to Avery. Are you strong enough for that? To tell your story publicly? If it puts her in prison, yes. It won't be easy. People will question you, challenge your story, try to tear you down. Your mother will deny everything. She'll try to make you look unstable, unreliable. Let her try, Avery said to Dr. Lauren smiled. Good. Then let's destroy her. She pulled out a folder and spread its contents across the coffee table. Newspaper clippings, printouts from websites, photographs of young women with haunted eyes and brave smiles. "This is my other work," Dr. Lawrence said. "I help trafficking survivors tell their stories. I've learned that silence protects predators. Publicity destroys them." Harry studied the materials. Stories of girls who'd been sold by parents, by boyfriends, by people they trusted. All of them had fought back. All of them had won. "What do you need from us?" he asked. "Time, trust, and a willingness to fight dirty when necessary." Dr. Lauren gathered up the papers. "Your wife isn't going to go down easy. She'll have lawyers, money, connections. But she made one crucial mistake." "What's that?" "She let her daughter live." Zeke called at 6 in the morning, 3 days after Harry had left Avery with him to begin the digital investigation. Harry answered on the first ring, instantly awake. Military training never left you the ability to go from sleep to full alertness in seconds. "You need to see this," Zeke said. Harry drove to Portland through the early morning fog that hung over the Columbia River like smoke from a battle that never ended. He found Zeke at his computer, surrounded by empty coffee cups and printouts covered in numbers that told stories no bank statement should ever tell. "I went back 5 years," Zeke said without looking up from his monitors. "Checked every financial transaction Jessica made in the 6 months around Avery's disappearance. Found something interesting." He pulled up a bank record on his main monitor. The screen showed a Chase Bank statement with several highlighted entries. October 15th, 2019. 1 week after Avery went missing. Wire transfer from Jessica's personal account to something called Pendine Imports, LLC. Amount, $150,000. Harry stared at the numbers. 6 figures. More money than Jessica had ever had access to in her life. Where did she get that kind of money? That's the beautiful part. She didn't have it. The transfer bounced initially insufficient funds. Then, 3 days later, she made the same transfer successfully. Someone had deposited exactly $150,000 into her account. Someone paid her, then she paid someone else. Gets better. I tracked down Pendine Imports. It's a shell company registered in Delaware. Single owner and operator. Zeke clicked to another screen showing business registration documents. Julian Rusk. The name meant nothing to Harry. Who is he? Real estate developer. Owns properties up and down the West Coast. Portland, Seattle, San Francisco. Also sits on the board of Pacific Logistics Solutions. Never heard of them. You should have. They're under federal investigation for human trafficking. Moving people across state lines for forced labor and sexual exploitation. Zeke pulled up a news article from the Seattle Times. FBI raided 3 of their facilities last year. Found evidence of a sophisticated operation: safe houses, transportation networks, financial systems designed to hide illegal transactions. Harry felt the pieces clicking together like a rifle being assembled. Each component had its place, its purpose, its role in the larger machine. Jessica sold Avery to Julian Rusk. He arranged the trafficking through Pacific Logistics. That's my read. But we need more than financial records to prove it. What else do you need? Zeke turned to face him. A confession would be nice. Harry studied the financial data spread across multiple monitors. Numbers didn't lie. They told stories that people tried to hide, revealed connections that were meant to stay buried. How long would it take you to map out all of Rusk's financial connections? A few days. Maybe a week if he's smart about hiding things. Do it. I want to know everyone he's worked with, everyone he's paid, everyone who's paid him. That's a lot of illegal surveillance. Good thing you're good at it. Zeke grinned. I'll need coffee. Lots of coffee. Whatever you need. Harry left Zeke to his digital archaeology and drove back to Willow Glen. He had other work to do. If they were going to take down Jessica and her accomplices, they needed more than financial records. They needed her voice, her words, her confessions spoken in her own voice. Doctor Evie Lawrence's office had been transformed into a war room. Maps of Oregon covered one wall, marked with red pins showing trafficking routes and safe houses that law enforcement had identified over the years. Another wall held photographs missing girls from across the state, their faces young and hopeful, their stories ending in darkness. We're going to make Avery famous, Dr. Lawrence said. But we're going to do it carefully. She handed Harry a folder. Inside were printed pages from a blog called Stolen Voices, stories written by trafficking survivors, all anonymous, all heartbreaking in their simple honesty. Avery's going to write her story, Dr. Lawrence continued. Not all of it, not the worst parts, but enough to establish her credibility, her voice. We'll publish it anonymously at first. What's the point if no one knows who wrote it? Because once people start sharing it, once it gets attention, then we reveal her identity. We show that this isn't some distant tragedy. This happened here, in Willow Glen, to a local girl whose mother sold her for money. Avery sat at the desk, writing in a composition notebook. Her handwriting was careful, controlled, nothing like the messy scrawl she'd had as a teenager. 5 years of hell had taught her precision in everything. What happens when Jessica sees it? Harry asked. She'll deny it, Dr. Lawrence said. She'll claim Avery is mentally ill, making up stories for attention. That's fine. It gives us a chance to present evidence. What evidence? Dr. Lawrence smiled, like a general planning a battle. The evidence you and Zeke are going to get for us. Harry read over Avery's shoulder as she wrote. I was 15 when my mother made me breakfast and told me she loved me for the last time. The pancakes had drugs in them. When I woke up, I was in a stranger's car, heading toward a life I couldn't imagine. This is my story. This is what happened when someone you trust decides you're worth more as a commodity than as a daughter. I'm writing this because silence protects predators. Because other girls are being sold right now, today, by people who are supposed to love them. Because the woman who gave birth to me is still free, still pretending to be a victim instead of the monster she really is. The words were simple, direct, devastating. No self-pity, no melodrama. Just truth told in a voice that couldn't be ignored. This is good, Harry said. This will get attention. It's not enough, Dr. Lawrence replied. We need more than one story. We need a campaign. She spread more documents across her desk. Social media printouts, news articles, photographs of successful prosecutions in other trafficking cases. We're going to build a movement around Avery's story. Other survivors will come forward. Parents will start asking questions about their missing daughters. The media will investigate. Politicians will demand action. And Jessica will be trapped in the center of a hurricane she can't control. Every word she says will be analyzed. Every lie will be exposed. By the time we're done, she'll have no choice but to confess or face destruction. Harry looked at his daughter, who continued writing with the intensity of someone who'd found her purpose. She's strong enough for this. She's the strongest person I've ever met, Dr. Lawrence said. 5 years in hell didn't break her. A few lawyers and journalists won't either. Harry parked across the street from Jessica's yoga studio and waited. She attended the same class every Tuesday at 10 a.m., part of her carefully structured routine that made her feel important and virtuous. 90 minutes of pretending to be centered and peaceful, surrounded by other wealthy women who thought spiritual practice meant buying expensive leggings. Zeke had installed the listening device in her car while she was inside a tiny transmitter hidden behind the dashboard. Invisible, but powerful enough to pick up every word spoken in the vehicle. Military-grade surveillance equipment, the kind that had helped them track insurgents through the mountains of Afghanistan. Harry's phone buzzed. Text from Zeke, device active, recording everything. Now came the hard part. Harry had to make Jessica panic enough to call her contacts, but not so much that she suspected surveillance. It was a delicate balance, like setting off a controlled explosion. He wrote the message on plain white paper with a pen bought at a gas station, wearing gloves to avoid fingerprints. Jessica, we know what you did to Avery. She remembers everything. You have 48 hours to confess before we go to the FBI. This is your only warning. He slipped the note under her windshield wiper and drove away, parking 3 blocks down where he could see her car but not be seen. His phone rang 20 minutes later. Zeke, she found the note, Zeke said. She's freaking out. Calling someone right now. Can you hear it? Crystal clear. Recording everything. She just said, wait, listen to this. Zeke put the call on speaker. Jessica's voice came through, tight with panic. Julian? It's me. We have a problem. Someone knows about the girl. A man's voice responded, calm and cold. What girl? Don't play stupid. Avery, my daughter. Someone left me a note saying she remembers everything. That's impossible. You said she was taken care of. I said she was gone. I didn't ask what you did with her. I just wanted her gone, and you made her disappear. I paid for that. Keep your voice down. Don't tell me to keep my voice down. If this comes out, we're both finished. I need to know what happened to her. She was moved out of state. Multiple transfers. The paper trail goes nowhere. But what if she escaped? What if she's alive? Silence. Then Julian's voice, cold and calculating. If she was alive, she would have come forward years ago. This is someone fishing, trying to scare you. Ignore it. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who sold your own daughter. You came to me because you had a problem. I solved it. For a considerable fee, I might add. $150,000. Worth every penny to get that little brat out of your life. You said she was asking too many questions, threatening to tell people about your business arrangements. She was going to ruin everything. The money, the lifestyle, the freedom to do what I wanted without some teenager judging me. So you made a practical decision. Nothing wrong with that. The call ended. Harry stared at his phone, barely breathing. They had her. In her own words, her own voice, confessing to selling her daughter for money and freedom. His phone rang again. Zeke, did you get that? Every word. Digital recording, multiple backup copies. This will hold up in court. Good, because we're going to need it. Deputy Owen Kress looked like he'd aged 10 years in the 5 since Avery's disappearance. His uniform hung loose on his frame, and his eyes held the hollow look of a man who'd failed at the most important moment of his career. Harry found him at the diner on Main Street, eating breakfast alone at a corner booth, the same booth where he'd sat 5 years ago when he'd given up looking for Avery. Mr. Lockhart, I wonder when you'd show up. You know why I'm here. Your daughter. She's back. Harry slid into the booth across from him. The vinyl was cracked and patched with duct tape, and the table had coffee rings that spoke of too many conversations about lost causes. You know, small town. Word travels fast. Heard she's been seen around town with some social worker from Portland. Dr. Evie Larn. That's the one. Kress pushed his eggs around his plate without eating them. Also heard some interesting stories about what she's been saying. Interesting how? The kind that makes a man wonder how he missed so much 5 years ago. Harry studied the deputy's face. Guilt and regret warred with something else, hope. Maybe the chance for redemption. You missed it because someone wanted you to miss it, Harry said. That's what I figured. Question is, can you prove it? Harry pulled out his phone and played the recording. Jessica's voice filled the small space between them, confessing to selling her daughter for money. When it finished, Kress was white as paper. Jesus Christ. There's more. Financial records. Bank transfers. A paper trail that leads directly to a trafficking organization under federal investigation. Why bring this to me? Why not go straight to the FBI? Because I know you. You were a good cop who got played by people smarter and richer than you expected. This is your chance to make it right. Kress was quiet for a long time, staring at his cold breakfast. Finally, he looked up. What do you need? A clean channel to the FBI. Someone who won't tip off the locals before arrests can be made. I have a contact at the Portland field office. Agent we worked with on another trafficking case last year. She's good people. Can you trust her? With my life. Then make the call. Kress pulled out his phone and dialed. The conversation was brief, professional, and ended with arrangements for a meeting that afternoon. Agent Chin will see you at 2, Kress said. Bring everything you have. What about you? I'll be there too. This is my case to finish. Lorna Kipp lived in a small apartment complex in Sacramento, California. Harry and Avery drove down together, the first long trip they'd taken since she'd returned. Avery stared out the window as they crossed the Oregon border, watching familiar landscapes disappear behind them. You don't have to do this, Harry said. We have enough evidence. I need to see her again. To thank her. For what? For saving my life. For believing me when no one else would. The drive took 8 hours through mountains and valleys that had seen their share of desperate people trying to disappear. Harry wondered how many other girls had been moved along these highways, transported like cargo from one hell to another. Lorna answered her door wearing paint-stained jeans and a t-shirt that read, "Nevertheless." She persisted. She was older than Harry expected, maybe 55, with gray hair and kind eyes that sharpened when she saw Avery. "My God," she whispered. "You found him." "Hi, Lorna." They embraced on the doorstep, two women who had survived different kinds of hell and found each other on the other side. That Lorna's apartment was small but warm, filled with artwork created by the girls she'd helped over the years. Paintings and drawings covered the walls, faces full of pain and hope and determination. Each piece told a story of survival. "Tell me everything," Lorna said once they were settled with coffee. Avery told her about coming home, about Harry's investigation, about the plan to expose Jessica and her accomplices. Lorna listened with the intensity of someone who'd heard too many similar stories, each one a personal wound. "I'll testify," she said when Avery finished. "Whatever you need. It might get ugly. Defense lawyers will try to discredit you, claim you're biased or unreliable. Let them try. I've been doing this work for 15 years. I know how to handle lawyers." Lorna disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a small jewelry box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a silver bracelet, simple, handmade, with Avery engraved in careful letters. "You wore this when you came to me," Lorna said. "You said your father made it for you." Avery took the bracelet with trembling hands. "I thought I'd lost it. I kept it safe. I keep something from every girl who passes through here. Reminders that they're real people, not just statistics." Harry recognized the bracelet. He'd made it in his garage workshop when Avery was 12, stamping each letter by hand because she'd asked for something that was just hers, something no one else had. "This proves you knew her," he said to Lorna. "Proves she was where she said she was. It proves more than that. I documented everything when she arrived, her condition, her injuries, her story. I have photographs, medical records, statements she gave over the 6 months she stayed with me." "Why didn't you contact the authorities?" She was terrified they wouldn't believe her. Terrified they'd send her back. "I've seen it happen before. Girls returned to the people who sold them because no one wanted to believe the truth." Lorna pulled out a thick folder. "Everything's in here. Dates, times, documentation of her recovery. Proof that Avery Lockhart was trafficked and that she escaped with my help." Harry looked at his daughter, who sat holding the bracelet like a talisman. "Ready to finish this?" "Ready," she said. The FBI agents came at dawn, just as Harry knew they would. He stood at his bedroom window and watched them surround Jessica's house, black SUVs blocking both ends of the street, agents in tactical gear moving with practiced efficiency. The operation was textbook perfect, coordinated to prevent escape or evidence destruction. His phone rang. Agent Sarah Chun from the Portland field office. "It's happening," she said. Both locations simultaneously. Harry could see Jessica's bedroom light come on as agents pounded on her front door. Even from across the street, he could hear her voice shrill, panicked, demanding to know what was happening. Federal agents. Search warrant. The front door splintered open. Agents flooded in while Jessica screamed about rights and lawyers and mistakes. She appeared at her bedroom window in her silk pajamas, cell phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Julian. Too late. Harry's phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chun. Rusk in custody. No complications. Jessica was let out in handcuffs 10 minutes later. She dressed quickly in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, as if looking expensive might somehow help her situation. Her blonde hair was perfect despite the early hour. She'd taken time to style it, even while being arrested. Harry watched from his window as she was loaded into the back of an FBI vehicle. She looked up at his house just before the door closed, and their eyes met through the glass. Her expression held no remorse, no shame, only fury at being caught. "She sees you," Avery said from behind him. Harry turned to find his daughter standing in the doorway, wrapped in the old quilt. She'd been awake too, watching the end of their long campaign for justice. "Good," Harry said. "I want her to know who brought her down." Agent Chin called again as the convoy pulled away. Both subjects in custody. Evidence teams are processing both properties. We found extensive financial records at Rusk's office, including documentation of the Pacific Logistics connection. What happens now? Federal grand jury. With the evidence you provided plus what we're finding in the searches, this should move quickly. Harry ended the call and found Avery in the kitchen, making coffee with steady hands. She'd watched the arrest from the back door, staying out of sight but wanting to see it happen. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Empty," she said. "I thought I'd feel satisfied or happy or something. But it's just empty. The feeling will come later, when it's really over." She poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed him one. "Do you think she'll try to plead guilty? Make some kind of deal?" "No. She'll fight it to the end. She's convinced she's smarter than everyone else." "Good," Avery said. "I want her to fight. I want everyone to hear what she did." The federal courthouse in Portland was packed for the opening day of testimony. Media trucks lined the street outside, their satellite dishes reaching toward the gray Oregon sky like mechanical flowers. Harry had never seen so many reporters in one place. Dr. Evie Lawrence's media strategy had worked perfectly. Avery's blog posts had been shared thousands of times across social media. Local news had picked up the story, then national outlets. The case had become a symbol of a beautiful suburban family destroyed by greed and betrayal. Harry sat in the front row of the gallery, directly behind the prosecution table. Avery was beside him, wearing a simple blue dress that made her look younger than her 20 years. They discussed whether she should dress more formally, but Dr. Lawrence had advised against it. "Let the jury see you as you are," she'd said. "A young woman who survived something terrible." Jessica sat at the defense table in an expensive gray suit, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. She'd hired the best criminal attorney money could buy, a woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in defending wealthy clients accused of shocking crimes. Julian Rusk sat at his own table with his own expensive lawyer. He looked smaller than Harry had expected, a pale man in his late 40s who kept adjusting his tie nervously. The prosecution opened with the recording. Jessica's voice filled the courtroom, cold and clear. "I didn't ask what you did with her. I just wanted her gone, and you made her disappear. I paid for that." Several jurors winced. One woman in the back row put her hand to her mouth. Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Torres played the recording twice, then turned to face the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard a mother confess to selling her 15-year-old daughter to human traffickers. Not selling her clothes or her bicycle, selling her for $150,000. He outlined the evidence, methodically, the financial records, the wire transfers, the connection to Pacific Logistics. Then he introduced Lorna Kipp. Lorna took the stand wearing a navy blue dress and the same determined expression she'd worn in her apartment. She testified about finding Avery, about the condition she was in, about the months of recovery that followed. She was severely traumatized, Lorna said, both physically and psychologically. She'd been moved between multiple locations, sold to different buyers. She was malnourished, injured, and terrified to trust anyone. Patricia Vance tried to discredit her during cross-examination, suggesting that Lorna was biased against parents, that she made money by helping runaways stay hidden from their families. "I help trafficked children recover from trauma," Lorna said calmly. "I don't make money from it. I do it because children like Avery deserve to be safe." "But you have no way of knowing whether Miss Lockhart's story is true, do you? You only have her word for what happened." "I have her word, her injuries, her psychological profile, and 15 years of experience working with trafficking victims. Everything about Avery's case is consistent with child trafficking. Consistent with, but not proof of. Proof is what financial records are for. Proof is what recorded confessions are for." The judge sustained an objection, but the point was made. Zeke testified about the digital evidence, walking the jury through bank records and wire transfers with the patience of a teacher explaining arithmetic to children. By the time he finished, the money trail was undeniable. Deputy Owen Kress testified about the original investigation, admitting his failures with a humility that made Harry respect him more than he'd expected. "I believed Mrs. Lockhart when she said her daughter had run away," Kress said. "I believed her when she said Avery was troubled, rebellious, likely to disappear without warning. I failed to dig deeper, failed to ask the right questions. I failed that child." Finally, Avery took the stand. She wore the silver bracelet Harry had made for her, visible just below the sleeve of her dress. She spoke clearly, without drama or emotion, telling her story the way she'd practiced with Dr. Lauren. "My mother made me breakfast that morning," she said. "Pancakes with syrup. She told me she loved me and that everything was going to be better. I believed her because she was my mother." She described waking up in the car, the confusion and terror of realizing she'd been drugged and taken. She talked about the first house where they'd kept her, the men who came and went, the gradual understanding that she'd been sold like property. "They call me merchandise," she said. "Product. Asset. Never by my name." Patricia Vance's cross-examination was brutal. She attacked Avery's memory, her credibility, her mental state. She suggested that Avery had run away voluntarily and was now making up stories to get attention. "Isn't it true that you were having behavioral problems at home? That you were angry with your mother, rebellious, acting out?" "I was 15, Avery said. "I was probably difficult sometimes. Most teenagers are. Difficult enough that your mother might have felt overwhelmed, might have needed help dealing with you. She could have grounded me. She could have taken away my phone. She could have sent me to counseling. She didn't have to sell me to child traffickers." The courtroom was silent except for the scratch of reporters' pens. "But you have no proof that's what happened, do you? No proof beyond your own claims." Avery looked directly at Jessica for the first time during the trial. "I have her confession. You heard it too." When Patricia Vance tried to suggest that the recording was taken out of context, Avery's expression never changed. "There's no context that makes selling your child acceptable," she said. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Harry spent the time pacing the courthouse halls, unable to sit still, unable to think about anything except the 12 strangers deciding his family's fate. Avery was calmer, sitting with Dr. Lauren and reading a book about art therapy. She'd been accepted to Portland State University's art program and planned to start classes in the fall. Her paintings had gotten stronger during the months of preparation for trial, darker, but more powerful, full of images that spoke to survival and recovery. When the bailiff called them back to the courtroom, Harry's heart hammered against his ribs. Avery took his hand as they walked in, her fingers steady and warm. The jury foreman stood. "In the case of United States versus Jessica Lockhart, on the charge of conspiracy to commit human trafficking, we find the defendant guilty." Jessica's face went white. Her lawyer put a steadying hand on her arm. "On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty." The same verdict for Julian Rusk. Guilty on all counts. Jessica finally looked at Harry and Avery, her blue eyes blazing with hatred. No remorse, no shame, just fury at being held accountable. The judge set sentencing for the following month. Harry knew the federal guidelines. Jessica was looking at decades in prison. Julian, too. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around them. Harry let Avery speak first. "I want other survivors to know that justice is possible," she said. "That people will believe you if you tell the truth. That the people who hurt you can be held accountable." A reporter asked Harry how he felt about his wife's conviction. "She's not my wife," he said. "My wife died 5 years ago when she sold her daughter. The woman in that courtroom is a stranger who stole my family's life. Do you forgive her?" Harry looked directly into the camera. "I don't believe in forgiveness for this. I believe in justice. And my daughter has it now." Jessica received 52 years in federal prison. Julian got 41. Both would die behind bars unless they lived to be very old. Harry read about the sentencing in the newspaper while sitting in his backyard, watching Avery paint at the easel he'd built for her near the apple tree where she'd returned to him. Fall was turning to winter, but she wore a heavy coat and painted anyway, capturing the way light fell through the bare branches. The newspaper article was thorough, detailing the investigation, the trial, the evidence that had brought down a trafficking network operating across 3 states. Pacific Logistics had been dismantled. 17 other people had been arrested. Dozens of girls had been rescued. "What are you working on?" he asked. "A series about coming home," she said. "About the difference between the place you leave and the place you return to." She'd been living with him for 8 months now, slowly rebuilding the relationship they'd lost. She was different than the 15-year-old who'd disappeared, harder in some ways, but also stronger. more certain about what mattered and what didn't. "I'm thinking about changing my name," she said without looking up from her canvas. "To what?" "Avery Kipp. Lorna said I could use hers if I wanted. Like an adoption." Harry felt a stab of something not quite pain, not quite loss. "You don't want to be a Lockhart anymore? That name comes with too much history. Too much of her." She gestured toward the house where Jessica had lived and lied for so many years. Harry had put on a market, planning to move somewhere that didn't hold so many ghosts. "I understand," he said. And he did. Avery needed to choose her own identity, her own family. She'd earned that right. "I'll always be your daughter," she said. "Names don't change that." Harry stood behind her and looked at the painting. It showed a garden in transition, some plants dying back for winter, others showing the first signs of spring growth. Death and rebirth in the same frame. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's honest." That night, Harry started building the greenhouse he'd been planning. A place where Avery could paint when the weather turned cold, where they could grow things together, where something good could take root in the place where so much had been destroyed. He worked by lamplight, measuring and cutting lumber with the precision his military training had taught him. Every angle had to be perfect. Every joint had to be strong enough to last. Avery watched from the back door, wrapped in a quilt that had become hers. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I want to." "What?" Harry set down his saw and looked at her, this young woman who had survived the unthinkable and come home to tell the truth, no matter how much it hurt. "Because you came back to us," he said. "You brought me back with you." She smiled then, the first completely unguarded smile he'd seen since her return. It was his daughter's smile, but it belonged to the woman she'd become. Spring would come. The garden would grow again, and they would tend it together. Two people who had learned that some betrayals could never be forgiven, but that love could survive even the worst kind of destruction. The greenhouse would stand where Jessica had once walked, where she had planned her lies and counted her blood money. Now, it would shelter new growth, honest growth, the kind that put down deep roots and refused to be destroyed. Harry picked up his saw and continued working. There was still so much to build.